Hey everybody, Citizens in Action Clark County, or CIA Clark County here. We are here to share some information with you that we hope can get a little bit of circulation before our upcoming local November 7th election for our Jeffersonville City Council. All these people you see on screen here are going to be up for re-election. Except for Mr. Ellis, he is not running again. Some of these gentlemen are unopposed, so we don't have much choice with that. But there are some competitive candidates for some of these positions, depending on where you live and who's going to be on your ballot. So we've got some information to share with you. Usually we drop things into our Telegram channel. We keep a lot of documents there. However, there's just not enough time to go over the amount of information that I'm about to share with you here today. So I know that it's really, really boring to kind of dig through and sift through documents. So we have done that for you and just turned it into a somewhat short presentation. So if you can kind of stick with us here, we'll explain some things that we think you should know before you go into the voting booth on Tuesday. And some of you may have already voted. However, we have some pretty big concerns that these men here sitting on the current council are approving purchases, large purchases of our taxpayer dollars without much thought, without much discussion, and without much oversight. Primarily, we're concerned about a recent approval from the September 18th meeting of the council where Jeffersonville Police Department approached the council for a recommendation for approval for a total of 18 police vehicles from John Jones Auto Dealership. And that was approved without any bids whatsoever. So bids are extremely important, especially for a large purchase, which you can imagine that 18 police vehicles would be considered a large purchase. In fact, it's close to $1.2 million. And per the policies of this council, called the procurement and purchasing policy, anything under $50,000 is considered a micro purchase that does not require bids. And bids are when competing vendors submit documents, asking for the job or asking to make the sale. They take those from several vendors to compare the prices to make sure that we are spending taxpayer dollars responsibly. So we want to make sure that we keep that competition. We want to make sure that we are not purchasing from a monopoly, because that's when things can get pretty sketchy, and everybody wants their tax dollars to go as far as possible. So the first thing I want to do is I'd like to go into this procurement and purchasing policy just so you can see what it says. Now, this is the newest thing they follow. This was passed in 2022, signed by the appropriate people. So I'm just going to, let's make this smaller. I just want to point a couple things out, which the first thing I'll point out is conflict of interest. I'll go into that in just a little bit, but there's not supposed to be any conflict of interest when council members are approving purchases, especially large purchases. And we know at least one council member has a previous donation to a campaign from John Jones. So that's a conflict of interest right there. Procurement, competition, here it is right here. The city shall, to the extent possible, conduct procurement transactions in a manner providing full and open competition. Competition is key here. The purchasing agent shall not unduly limit competition and act in good faith. The following is a non-exhaustive list of prohibited practices that are considered to limit competition. Okay, there's several things listed there. So, key point, competition is very important. The next thing we want to point out here is the thresholds for what is considered a micro purchase, that is $50,000 or less. Between $50,000 and $150,000 is considered a small purchase. $150,000 or more does require a sealed bid request for proposal. So, because this was a total of 18 vehicles, and actually we'll discuss further that it ended up being more than 18 vehicles, this was absolutely supposed to be a sealed bid request for proposal process. and that's per their own policies. So this section here says that the purchasing agent shall not artificially divide purchasing requirements so as to constitute a lower threshold requirement for the procurement or to intentionally avoid bidding or proposal procedures as defined in this policy. That means you can't break down things into smaller categories so as to make the total purchase look like a micro purchase when in fact it was a large purchase. So what they have done here in this particular example, which I'll go over the documents that we sent a records request for and obtained, is that they split up purchase price of each vehicle. They separated that from the extra equipment that went into making them into a police vehicle. So everything was very, very broken down and fragmented so as to avoid this bidding process, which does not allow for competition. Not only that, but John Jones Auto Dealership is not close to Jeffersonville. It's actually several locations between 27 and 37 miles away. Not only that, but all the vehicles seemingly go there for any kind of auto parts, any kind of repairs, any kind of maintenance. So we are actually quite shocked to discover that John Jones Auto apparently does have a monopoly over our police vehicles and possibly more of our city vehicles as well. We haven't dug into the rest of the city vehicles yet, but we intend to. Just a couple things here for procurement methods. Micro purchase. And here again, it says even under micro purchase, to the extent practicable, the city will distribute micro purchases equitably among qualified suppliers or providers. There are plenty of car dealerships that are closer than 27 and 37 miles away. And I, as a taxpayer here in Jeffersonville, would have liked to have seen bids of those other dealerships to make sure that my tax dollars are being spent appropriately and that we're getting the very lowest price for these police vehicles. $150,000, between $50,000 and $150,000. Purchasing agent for the city may purchase supplies or services under this section by inviting quotes from at least 3 qualified vendors. Okay, so like I said before, we're talking about a purchase of about $1.2 million financed by First Savings Bank. And that to me certainly counts as not 18 individual micro purchases, but in fact, one large purchase that should have received a bid. So we'll get right into it here. Let's start on the September 18th Common Council of City Jeffersonville, Indiana meeting. What drew our attention, one of our members picked this up because that's what we do. We watch and we pay attention to the actions of our appointed and elected government officials because we want to hold them accountable for taxpayer dollars. So we like to do some digging on things. What we noticed on the September 18th meeting was this right here, JPD Assistant Chief McVoy. So this part was a regular part of the agenda. He goes on to say that the second reason he's here is to request a favorable recommendation for at least 12 Dodge Chargers and 6 Durangos for the police department. Okay, so you can estimate in your mind that that's a pretty big dollar amount if we're talking about 12 Dodge Chargers and 6 Durangos. It's been previous practice as a courtesy that JPD brings all agreements before the City Council prior to getting final approval from the Board of Public Works. Okay, so it goes to the council first for recommendation, and then the Board of Public Works, which the mayor sits on, is who does the final approval for purchases like this, according to McVoy in his statement. So Assistant Chief McVoy has spoken with First Savings Bank about entering into an agreement with them to lease, pay attention to lease, the vehicles over the next 4 years, and this is similar to what was done in 2016. I don't know what was done in 2016, but that's referenced here. The police department currently has the money in their budget for the down payment, and based off historical budget, they will have the money budgeted to make those payments. The total amount would include the vehicle and upfit. Okay, the amount will include the vehicle and the upfit. Everything additional, including stop kicks, radars, printers, radios, blah, blah, blah. No additional funds are being requested. This will come from JPD budget, Jeffersonville Police Department, budget over the course of the next 4 years. Council Vice President Hawkins asked how many vehicles will be leased, and Chief McVoy advised a total of 18. Council Vice President Hawkins stated that he typically is not in favor of passing expenses off to the next council and asked why they should lease the vehicles instead of buying. McVoy advised with leasing, they are able to replace more of their fleet in a faster manner, and at the end of 4 years, the police department can buy the vehicles back for $1.
And I come one as a courtesy, because this has been a past practice of the police department to inform the council of our intentions to enter into an agreement, as I discussed with the council president over the course of the next 4 years, to enter an agreement with First Savings Bank to lease, I believe it's 12 Dodge Chargers and 6 Durangos to begin to recycle and replenish our fleet. This is similar to what we did in 2016. It just seems to be 7 years later. We currently have money in our budget for a down payment, and then we'll use our historic budget that we've had for vehicles over the course of the lease term to make those payments to First Savings for those vehicles. So I came tonight to get your blessing before we bring the actual agreement to the Board of Public Works for a favorable recommendation for the total amount. And this would include the vehicles, the upfit, and everything that's additional with those vehicles, including stop sticks, radars, printers, radios, the tough books, and then the docking station. So this includes everything. There is no additional monies to be asked for. This would come out of our budget for the next 4 years for the agreement. So that would cover everything for those 18 vehicles. There's 2 theories of thought when it comes to leasing and buying. At the end of the 4-year term, the car is bought outright, I believe, for $1. I think that's yes. So residual is $1. Yes. So those vehicles were returned to us for that $1 price tag over the course of the 4 years, including the equipment.
So that's the arrangement he's laying out here. There will be $400,000 down payment, and the lease payment will roughly be $935,000 over 4 years, with an annual payment of around $270,000. Okay, so they voted on this, and the motion passed. I just wanted to take note that Councilperson Ellis abstained. And for anyone who's not really familiar with how these meetings go, abstained, just so you are aware, abstention from voting when an individual has the ability to vote but chooses not to, that individual is abstaining from voting. So I do like to pay attention to when any member of any board abstains from voting, because it usually means something. So they can abstain from voting when they believe voting on a particular issue represents a conflict of interest. They are withholding their vote in protest, etc. So I just like to make note of that. However, down in the public comments, there is a note about that, and it says, Councilperson Ellis, his notes or his comments, he advised that he will be abstaining from voting on any appropriations or budget issues from here on out, due to this being his last year on council. So that's the reason he abstained. Okay, so that was the September 18th meeting, and this prompted a member of our group to do some digging, because generally when you have a large purchase, we know that there is a bid process, and the bid process allows other people, locally or non-locally, preferably locally, to put in competing bids. So different auto dealerships might put in bids as long as they meet the requirements for supplying these vehicles. They're able to put in their bids for the city to choose from. They're usually sealed, and then they will unseal them publicly in a public meeting for purchases of this size, to make sure that we are competitively picking the best vendor to supply these things that are being paid for with taxpayer dollars. It's to prevent frivolous spending of our taxpayer dollars, and it's to promote the ethical purchases by government bodies. A few of us submitted records requests, and I have a copy of the one that I submitted. So for anyone who has not done a records request, it's very simple. Usually different departments have their own forms that you can fill out if you don't have your own template. I have my own template because I've done a bunch of these, but you basically just, can start with the address of where it's going to. This is in reference to the Freedom of Information Act request / Indiana Access to Public Records Act, IC 5143. In short, we call it APRA. So I requested the following documents. I wanted to see all contracts or agreements between the city of Jeffersonville and John Jones Auto Dealership, any location, because there are several locations, and the locations, by the way, are located not locally. We're talking about Salem, Indiana. So here's us, Jeffersonville. Okay, this one's Corydon that I had pulled up. So Jeffersonville John Jones Auto Dealership in Corydon is 27 miles away. We know certainly there are local dealerships in Jeffersonville. And then, of course, Salem is about 37 miles away. So that's where these police vehicles are being purchased from. And not only that, but that is where they are being worked on. That's where they're being taken for auto parts, for any mechanical issues that they might be having. They all seem to be going to John Jones, and it is very confusing as to why everything is going to this one place, because there are no contracts that exist. We asked for contracts between the city of Jeffersonville and John Jones Auto Dealership, and they cannot produce any contracts or agreements. So we know that they've not gotten bids, at least on this particular purchase, and we are unsure why they are taking them for all the police vehicles for parts and labor and upfitting and purchases and all this well outside of Jeffersonville. So, okay. So I requested all contracts or agreements between the city of Jeffersonville and John Jones Auto Dealership from 2021 through present date, so we can compare year after year what that might have looked like. The most recent purchase agreement between the city of Jeffersonville Police Department and John Jones for the purchase of 12 Dodge Chargers and 6 Dodge Durangos, approved at the 9/18 council meeting. And the most recent bids that the Jeffersonville City Council reviewed before approving the purchase of those vehicles from the 9/18 council meeting. All contracts or agreements between the city of Jeffersonville and any auto dealership for purchase of Jeffersonville Police Department vehicles in 2021 through present date. Then you sign date, send it in. This particular request goes to their legal department, which the legal department is run by Les Merkley and a lady named Jonna, who is the assistant there. I think she's a paralegal. So as I mentioned, the 9/18 approval was technically just a favorable recommendation. It's really kind of unclear about who officially approves these purchases, but the board did vote on 9/18 and approve these purchases. So now at the Board of Public Works meeting on October 18th, so this wasn't brought up at the Board of Public Works meeting until a month later, run by Mayor Mike Moore. And the reference to this particular issue is new business number 1, Scott McVoy, request for approval of contract between JPD and First Savings Bank for the purchase of Jeff Police Department Mobile Command Center. So that was part of the thing, part of the discussion that day. But Assistant Chief McVoy advised this commitment letter was between Jefferson Police Department and First Savings Bank and was for the equipment and vehicles being leased through First Savings Bank. Assistant Chief McVoy advised this received a favorable recommendation from the City Council at the September 18th meeting.
Business. In new business, Scott McVoy.
And the vehicles that we are going to lease through them This comes to you with a favorable recommendation from the city council from their 9/18 meeting. So we asked the board to approve that commitment letter today, so First Savings can get the financials in place for that purchase.
For the lease financing agreement. Motion to approve. Second. I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Mr. Crouch made a motion to approve the lease financing agreement, and Mr. Ways seconded the motion. It passed 3-0. Okay, so without much discussion at all, this was just approved. There wasn't a total purchase amount discussed. They didn't even ask any questions like that. They just approved it. So those are the meeting minutes and how this purchase was approved, with not much oversight or detail discussed. All right. Let's hide this. Now, here's where things started getting a little suspicious because we are just putting in a standard records request. These records should be very available, seeing as how these are recent purchases. Our city of Jeffersonville should be keeping organized records that they can just pull in a very short amount of time. So when you do a records request, you will get a response back within the first 7 days. They don't have to produce the records within the first 7 days, but they do need to acknowledge within 7 days that they have received your request, and then they generally give an estimate of time for producing the records. So that's what I received on September 25th, submitted the request on September 23rd, received this letter September 25th, that as required by law, they will produce these records. And they said that it would be no later than Friday, October 27th. Okay, well, that's pretty excessive. I mean, that's a month of time to produce some very simple documents. But, we're not sure how backed up they are. So we had no choice but to wait. Because there is not Indiana law that tells these entities that they have to produce records faster. So shortly after we are waiting for records, October 16th rolls around. And now keep in mind that our council is up for re-election on November 7th, Tuesday, November 7th. So we are trying to obtain these records before the election so that we have time to make an informed decision on who we're going to vote into our council, because you can only vote for these people every 4 years. So on October 16th, they decide that they need more time to produce these very simple records. And notice that they have changed the date to Friday, November 10th, 2023, conveniently 3 days after the next election. So to me, that sounds a little bit, signed by Jonna Anderson, paralegal, to Les Merkley. That sounds a little bit like election interference to me. So I did write back to Jonna, telling her, and I won't share screens on all the ins and outs of the back and forth, but I basically told her that that is completely unacceptable. She needs to give me the documents by the original date of October 27th, so as to make an informed decision come election day. November 10th can be seen as election interference. I cited some Indiana codes on election interference, and magically, she was, in fact, able to give the documents by October 30th. Still much later than I would have liked, but at least it was before the election. So this was the response, finally, on October 30th. The following is a response. So any contracts or agreements between City of Jeff and John Jones from 2021 through present date, see attached. And I'll just point out that we only received 2023. I did not receive anything from 2021 or 2022. So I can't make a comparison about how this year's purchases look compared to prior years. So I don't know if they don't exist or they just didn't give them to me. The most recent purchase agreement between City of Jeff Police Department and John Jones, approved at the 9/18 council meeting, see attached. I'll go through those in a second. Most recent bids. Okay, so here's where they're saying no documents exist for bids. Bids are not required for such purchases under IC 52282, IC 52210, and the City of Jeffersonville procurement and purchasing policy. Okay. IC 52282 is Indiana law, which you can look up if you'd like, but it just goes over rules and regulations for purchases, and basically says that smaller purchases are considered to be under $50,000, and that you would refer to your local policies and procedures for those instances of purchases. So they leave it up to the county to kind of create their own policies for purchases under $50,000. Now, we know this purchase was over $1 million, so I'm not really sure how they're counting that as a small purchase, but this is what was given to us, and this is what document we could not find. So if you search this up, or at least when I searched it up online, City of Jeffersonville procurement and purchasing policy, this does not pop up for me, so it's not it's not a document readily available to the public. I couldn't find it on the website, so I did go back and request this from Les Merkley and Jonna, and they did provide this. All contracts or agreements between the City of Jeff and any auto dealership for purchase of Jeffersonville Police Departments. And they say those documents do not exist, probably because they don't purchase things from other auto dealerships. They are only going to John Jones, is what I'm to gather from this. And also that there's no contract or agreement that exists ongoing between John Jones and Jeffersonville, City of Jeffersonville. So we've got a couple contracts and agreements. This particular one was for a Chevrolet Silverado, and this is dated 1/13/23. So what I am noticing about this is that they've included everything here. This is called John Jones Auto Group Worksheet. It has signatures on it, which usually, when things are completed, purchases are completed, contracts, agreements are completed, they have signatures on them. Even though it is a government entity purchasing the product or the equipment or the property, there still is a purchasing agent that is authorized to sign on behalf of that department. All right, here's what we are actually here to talk about: the John Jones recent purchases of the 12 Chargers and the 6 Durangos. Okay, so let me point out some very key points here. This is called a retail buyer's order. So again, remember that McVoy talked all about leasing the vehicles. That's what he got approval for. That's what he presented to the Public Board of Works and the City Council. No discussion about buying. It was leasing for that four-year term, then purchasing the vehicles for $1. Okay, that's not listed here anywhere. There's no discussion of leasing or purchasing or obtaining the vehicles for $1 after that 4 years. This is just a very simple buyer's order. It was purchased outright, financed by First Savings, but purchased nonetheless. So a key thing to point out here is the date of the buyer's order. This is one of 12. So there are 12 just like this with these. They all have different VIN numbers. This one ends in 9557. Okay. So this is dated 9/27, which of course is before the final approval on 10/18. So did these purchases happen before the final approval of 10/18? Did they go ahead and purchase these without approval? Or is this not the correct document? We're really not sure. Notice down here, the total purchase price is $38,018. And that is the same for every single one of these. They've all got different VIN numbers, but the purchase price for the Dodge Chargers is $38,018 times 12. Now, here's the kicker. When we finally figured out their actual policies for purchases of under $50,000, which is how they're claiming that they do not have to obtain bids for these purchases, they are pricing them out individually. So under $50,000, they are not required to obtain bids. So what they're doing is they are separating $38,018 from separate. Now look, this is the exact same VIN number ending in 9557. And the upfit The upfit is what makes the vehicle transform from a regular vehicle into a police vehicle. The lights, the sirens, the radios, all that good stuff. So this is part of the purchase, yet they have made it separate to reduce it below that $50,000 threshold. All right. Highly unethical, highly unlawful. So let's just do some basic math here. The Dodge Charger's $38,018. The upfit is another $13,545. That's a total for each vehicle of $51,563. Now times that by 12, because there were 12 Dodge Chargers approved, $618,756. All right, so that's the total amount for that. Now, let's go to the Durangos. And where do I have Durangos? Durangos. Okay, the Durangos are $43,095. Now, in my records request, they did not give me the upfit price. So, you saw before with the Chargers, there was a separate charge for the upfit. They only gave me this buyer's order for the vehicle itself at $43,095. Now, another member of our group did receive the separate upfits for these same VIN numbers. Okay, so I actually got an incomplete record response. The other person in our group did get the upfit price. So $43,095, here's what that looked like. And remember, there were only 6 of these approved. So $43,095. The upfit for those vehicles is $14,585 for a total of $57,680 per vehicle times 6 equals $346,080 plus the $618,756 from the other vehicles, the 12 Chargers. That's a total of $964,836. But look at the finance. The purchase price for the financing of these approved vehicles is $1,229,874. Financing $830,374. So, where is the discrepancy here? Now, like I said, I did not obtain these records because my records response was incomplete. However, a member of our group did receive additional upfit receipts, buyer's orders, just like this one, that were for an upfit, except they were for the Dodge Durangos for that $14,000 some odd amount. She had not only obtained the 6 that were approved, but there were 4 additional ones. So it looks like instead of 6 Durangos, they actually went ahead and purchased 10. We don't have the buyer's orders for the additional 4, but we do have the upfit for the additional 4. So we are pretty confident that they actually purchased not 6 of these, but 10 of them. So what would that look like? Dodge Durangos, $43,095. The upfit, $14,585. That's the total there. Now times 10, $576,800 plus the $618,756 from the Chargers, 12 Chargers. Now that's more like $1,195,556. But still, we financed $1.2 million. So what the heck is going on here? That's a difference of $34,318 that can't be accounted for. Why did we finance more than the vehicle's cost? And why does it seem like they purchased 4 more vehicles than were approved? And why are these vehicles purchased at all and not leased, which was approved in both the meetings that we just saw? Another really interesting thing that our member found is that back in January of 2023, we purchased a Dodge Durango, or the city of Jeff purchased a Dodge Durango. At $41,125, the upfit at that point in January was only $9,838, not $14,000, for a total vehicle price of $50,963. Now, this is still a police vehicle, so it should be about the same price. The upfit increased in the same year, 2023, 48.2%. So this is why we do not want a monopoly in purchases. This is why we expect competitive bidding, because once they start going all to the same person, this is what can happen. They start increasing by crazy amounts, like 48.2% in a short period of time. And this is all taxpayer dollars just going down the toilet. One final thing I'm going to point out here, other than the date of 9/27, which doesn't seem to match up with when this order was approved for purchase, there are no signatures on anything, no buyer signature, no accepted for dealer. This does not even seem to be a legitimate, fully executed contract, agreement, buyer's order, whatever you want to call it. There should be a purchasing agent signature on these documents, and it's just not adding up. Scott McVoy, who is the Jeffersonville Police Department representative who came and requested the vehicle purchase, just a little FYI for those of you, he is also a sitting council member of the town of Sellersburg. So Mr. McVoy is very familiar with the bidding process. He's very familiar with proper purchase procedures. So we think he knows exactly what he's doing when he's proposing these things and skirting around the bidding process. Another thing to note is that we found this. There's an online website that you can look up as far as donations to campaigns. And here you see here the one that we could find on this particular website. We have not obtained current campaign information from Matt Owen, but you can see that John Jones Chrysler Jeep Ram did donate to Matt Owen's campaign, at least in 2018. And that definitely establishes a connection between Matt Owen and John Jones. So I'm wondering if Matt Owen filled out a form to outline a conflict of interest. And it certainly seemed like he participated in the vote, which he should not have. Okay, so here's where you find the City of Jeffersonville Council, cityofjeff.net, City Council. These are our council members. They are all up for election on Tuesday, and there are several that are unopposed, but a few of them do have competition. So after going through this little presentation, just vote responsibly and know that we have some concerns with the sitting members of this council. They seem to be approving things without much thought, and they seem to be approving large purchases, at least for the Jeffersonville Police Department, without the proper bidding procedures. Monopolies are not allowed. Competition is highly encouraged and actually required for large purchases, and that's so that we spend our tax dollars responsibly. So there they are. If you have any issues with the content that you're seeing here, here are your representatives on the council. Depending on what district you are in, you can email your specific representative or you can email them all. They may or may not respond. If you ever want to attend a meeting, they are 7 p.m. on the first and third Mondays. However, that does not apply to this upcoming Monday before Election Day. They've moved that meeting to the Wednesday after the election due to it being election week. You can find out which city council district you reside in, and you can check out the recordings on the city's Vimeo page if you cannot make it in person. So in conclusion, thanks for following us on this issue. We will continue to follow up. We've got some additional records requests that we have not obtained records for just yet. This is maybe seemingly not a big deal, but it truly is a big deal because, first of all, we need to hold our public representatives, appointed and elected, very responsible. very responsible for our taxpayer dollars. We cannot allow any kind of corruption. We cannot allow these representatives to cut corners. They are not above the law. They are not above we the people. We need to remember that they are employed by us, we the people, and they need to follow the rules, and they need to handle our taxpayer dollars responsibly, or they need to know that there will be repercussions and that people like you and I will be watching them. Thanks so much. See you next time.